Welcome back to Midnight Movie Club and my review of the latest Shudder exclusive, The Power. The Power was written and directed by Karina Faith and it stars Rose Williams, Marley Chesham, Mark Smith and Shakira Rahman. The film is set in 1973 as a young nurse is forced to work the night shift on her very first shift in a crumbling, decrepit hospital as, striking miners of the time have been switching off the power across London. This is no ordinary hospital though, it's not just the building itself that looks dodgy and rotten, it's the people within it, and there's secrets and paranormal entities lurking around its corners, and when the lights go out, it brings them all out, and the poor young nurse whose first shift it is has to deal with it all. She also has a very checkered past, so Val is in for a rough first night. First up, I reckon the first thing we have to touch on in this review is Val, this character played by Rose Williams, who gives an absolutely phenomenal performance. This was the first time I've seen Rose Williams perform in a film, and honestly she absolutely stole the show for me, and if she's in anything else, especially horror stuff in the future, I'll be very excited to check it out, as she put in a stellar performance, not even with the range of emotion that she had to bring to the forefront and carry this movie on her shoulders, but the actual physical stuff that she done and was capable of. She actually brung a lot of the movie's creep factor herself, and yeah, in those moments where you're claustrophobic and tight up there with her, you feel every sharp, shallow breath that she is taking, and when she's going through pain and some physical torment, you feel that with her as well. And I thought she brought across a real nice sense of empathy, especially towards the patients she was treating and the younger children that she wanted to be treating. She was a very likeable character, she came across very genuine, and yeah, it was just a great performance, great range of emotions, and as I said, that physical aspect of this role, Rose Williams absolutely smashed out the park. The same really goes for the rest of the supporting cast. Absolutely everyone is top notch. They're all very representative of the time period, I feel, and the dialogue, the writing for them was actually very well done. Every scene had this sort of, dramatic conflict. If it wasn't supernatural, there was something being said that one person didn't agree with, or there was a little bit of subtext there that you could read into a little bit more, and it gave this sense of conflict and tension in every scene, especially in the first act. It done really well in the first act to keep the movie moving forward when there was less supernatural stuff happening. Usually in these sort of ghost stories, the first act can be a little bit of a drag before you get to the good stuff, but in here it does get to the good stuff pretty quick. In saying that, but in here, before you do get to the supernatural stuff, there's a lot of dramatic conflict, surely just through dialogue and just tension between characters, and there's lots of subtext there, lots to read into, and yeah, so I really do have to give it to Karina Faith there with some very, very nice writing. Since I touched on it a little, we'll talk about pacing. The first act of this film is paced fantastically. There is maybe a little bit of a dip into the second act, but it very quickly picks back up again, and we are thrust into a very supernatural nightmare. And it actually takes a turn that I really wasn't expecting. Personally, I was expecting a far more traditional ghost story, but it takes a turn and goes a completely different direction. Some people like it, some people won't. For me, I would have preferred it if it just stuck to that traditional, haunted hospital ghost story. But I do appreciate where it went, and I believe the things it was touching on were very relevant and things that should be touched on. And I do believe that those things were just as terrifying as, like the supernatural and ghosts and all that sort of stuff. Where the pacing does falter from me was definitely the final act. Once we started coming down from the climax and getting into the conclusion, I feel like it could have ended a few minutes earlier, and I also do feel that it just lost its way. It loses all tension after a specific thing in the third act, where the supernatural stuff really does come to an end, or at least the supernatural scares come to an end, and by then, it's not scary anymore. I don't want to say anything because I don't want to spoil anything, But yeah, there's a noticeable stop in the third act where the scary stuff comes to a halt and it really becomes like a revenge thriller, and I really didn't like that. I didn't like that pivot away from the horror aspects of the film, as I felt The Power really nailed the horror aspects, but when it came to the revenge kind of thriller stuff, I thought, nah, it doesn't really mesh here. And in the end, it kind of felt like they were trying to stitch a different movie onto this one and connect it through this supernatural thread. But I really think if they just stuck with the supernatural stuff, the traditional ghost story, then it would have been a lot better. So in the end, I was a little bit disappointed. It's ended up losing itself, I thought, anyway. As I said, some people will probably like it, but me, I just didn't. Me personally, I just prefer if it just stuck to that original, traditional ghost story that I'd kind of prepared myself for during the runtime. Touching on some of the technical aspects of The Power now, this one was polished, man. It was pretty damn fantastic. The lighting was really good. How lots of the lighting, probably about 90% of it, all came from the gaslit torches that they were all using when they were walking around the hospital at night. And I really liked the build up to the power going out. It really gave you that sense, that feeling of, isolation and paranoia. And when the lights do eventually go out, it hits hard. And when those lights go out and the visuals darken, the sound design rises. The cinematography, especially in the dark, it leaves lots of empty spaces around Val as she is making her way down long corridors and stuff like that. And, your brain starts to play tricks on you. You start seeing faces and shapes in all these spaces everywhere. And I really liked how they done that. I really liked how they just, gave a lot of space to the frame and she's felt small in it. Lots of use of wide angles and stuff like that to make her look really small in this environment. And, it just looked really, really scary to walk down one of these hallways. I couldn't imagine what it used to be like in a situation like this. It would be absolutely horrible. And as I said, when it goes dark, the sound design really comes to the forefront. They're relying on the sound design to give it that atmosphere, and it bloody well does. I loved how they merged the score with the sounds of dying patients breathing throughout maybe 15-20 minutes of the film while they're in this one intensive care ward. This patient's breathing is always there. Even when there's just a conversation going on somewhere else, that kind of, gurgly, rough breathing, it just sounds like he's about to take his last breaths. That is under every single scene, and it really just gives you that sense of dread and death and something's about to creep up on them. It's almost like this constant low demonic growl, and it really gave the film this really evil, foreboding feel that I thought was fantastic. And the score itself was actually really good. It was very Conjuring-esque if you've watched the Conjuring movies. That long, rising drone. But they also had a little bit of synth in there, which I appreciated. But then they also mixed it with the usual kind of horror-y stuff, the strings and all that. And at certain points, it maybe was a little bit overbearing, where it would just be too loud over something and it would take centre stage too much, where I think they should have left it more to the sound design. But like I said, the most of this movie, it is the sound design that comes to the forefront, and the score kind of supports that, and it's really nice. It was a really, really nice combination. There's also very, very good use of the set itself. The set design is fantastic. I also loved this kind of children's area they had, but the children on it are making weird little gestures, like shushing gestures and stuff like that, keep the secrets to the staff, as if they've been told to shut up. And one kid looks like he's behind bars, one other kid's trying to float away with bones, all stuff like that subconsciously gives you this feeling these kids don't want to be here, we don't want to be here, something evil lurks here. And is evil that's supernatural and human, and I really liked that. Literally nowhere and no one felt safe. the building just looked grimy and dirty and run down, just somewhere you don't want to spend the night in complete darkness. But they also done this thing with reflections, with all of the mirrors and all of the windows, where Val would be looking at a reflection, and all of a sudden, like a poster or something on the other side of the window would, superimpose kind of with her reflection, and it would look like someone was like choking her from behind or something, but it was really just a poster in her reflection. And they do a few little things like that with reflections, and it was really, really well done. It was really clever and just really cool how they pulled that off. I really, really liked that. I do have to say though, when Val is walking down these long dark corridors at night, I did begin to feel like the movie had used all of its tricks early on. It felt a little bit like a one-trick pony in certain situations. Like there's only so many times someone can walk down a corridor, feel like someone's behind them, turn round, see nothing there, turn back, nothing there, turn back again, then there's something, or a scream, or a bang. Like it did feel like it was a little bit lost for creating scares sometimes. And don't get me wrong, this film does create some pretty genuine good scares, and they're not just like cheap jump scares. There's maybe like one cheap jump scare, but I'm not going to give it into trouble for that. One's not too bad. But yeah, I did feel in some situations with these long dark corridors it was a little bit of a one-trick pony. There was also some very nice practical effects when they had to be used. There's not much in here, but the blood that's there does look good, the blood and cuts and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, it's really good, and everything, as I said, technically was done to a very high standard. Just where the film falls away for me was definitely that last act, and that sort of pivot from full-on supernatural horror to straight up like revenge thriller. And I thought it was maybe a little bit cheesy with something it done in the end, and I just didn't like it. It's just not my personal preference of the way I wanted this film to go. But in saying that, it does create some very effective scares and a very, very creepy atmosphere throughout most of its runtime. So yeah, with all that said and done, I'm going to give Shudder's The Power a 3.5 out of 5 rating. If you're wondering, that's equivalent of a 7 out of 10, so that's pretty damn good. I did enjoy this one. It's definitely one of the better horrors there on Shudder, and if Shudder could keep producing Shudder exclusives like this, I would be very happy with that, and it would make the subscription all the while. So yeah, I did enjoy The Power. I just had some problems with the way it ended going in the end, but I wanted to like it even more. I just couldn't, because I found myself getting disinterested by the ending. But definitely the start, the setup and all the creepy moments throughout, I really enjoyed. I got little hints of like Silent Hill in there. I don't know if I'm the only one, but yeah. Let me know what you made of it in the comments section down below if you have seen it. If you enjoyed this review, please do leave a like, and if you are new here, then subscribe. As always, thank you very much for watching, and good night.